August 1943. Over the Solomon Islands, 8 Japanese Zeros circle like sharks. Below them, a lone B-25 Mitchell bomber trails smoke from its port engine. The starboard engine coughs, misfires, and begins to overheat. Inside the cockpit, the crew can smell burning oil mixing with their own sweat. They have perhaps 3 minutes before the second engine quits entirely. The Zeros are patient. They have time. They know how this ends. The bomber's pilot, Captain Eric Dawson, watches the enemy fighters through his cracked canopy. His co-pilot is calling out altitude loss, 200 feet per minute. The navigator is calculating ditching coordinates. The gunners are counting ammunition. Everyone is preparing for the inevitable. Then Dawson does something that makes his co-pilot grab the control yoke in panic. He reaches forward and shuts down the starboard engine on purpose. The propeller windmills to a stop. The bomber's nose drops. The aircraft transitions from powered flight to a glide, and the crew thinks their pilot has lost his mind. The co-pilot is screaming into the intercom. The navigator is demanding an explanation. The tail gunner reports the Zeros are moving in, sensing the kill. Dawson says nothing. His hand is steady on the stick. His eyes are locked on the enemy formation above. He is counting seconds in his head. He is calculating angles. He is waiting for the precise moment when physics will do what firepower cannot. The sky over the Solomons is not kind. It is humid and thick, the air heavy with moisture that makes every breath inside the unpressurized cabin feel like drowning. Below, the ocean stretches endless and indifferent. There are no rescue ships within 50 miles. If the crew bails out, they will drift for days before anyone finds them, if anyone finds them. The Japanese control these waters. Capture means interrogation, prison camps, or worse. The crew knows this. They have all heard the stories. They have all seen the empty bunks. The Zeros split into 2 groups, 4 high, 4 low, classic pincer. They will attack from opposite angles, shred the bomber with coordinated fire, and be gone before the gunners can track them. The lead Zero dives first, building speed, closing the distance. The pilot can see the rising sun insignia painted on the fuselage. He can see the canopy reflecting sunlight. He can almost see the enemy pilot's face. The range closes to 600 yards, 500, 400. The Zero's guns begin to flash. Dawson holds the glide. His bomber is descending at a steep angle now, nose down, no power, falling like a wounded bird. The airspeed is bleeding off, 190 knots, 180, 170. The controls are getting mushy. The aircraft is approaching the edge of its flight envelope. The co-pilot is still yelling. The crew is bracing for impact, and Dawson is watching the Zeros dive, faster and faster, committed to the attack. Run they cannot abort. He has done the math. He knows what happens next. The question is whether his crew will live long enough to see it. The Pacific Theater in 1943 is a graveyard measured in aluminum and blood. American bombers fly long missions over hostile water with margins so thin that a single mechanical failure becomes a death sentence. The Japanese Zero dominates these skies through pure physics. It climbs faster, turns tighter, and accelerates quicker than anything the Americans can field. The mathematics are brutal and unforgiving. 5th Air Force intelligence officers track the losses in spreadsheets that grow longer each week. B-25s, B-26s, A-20s. The numbers do not lie. For every 10 bombers that penetrate Japanese-held airspace, 2 do not return. Of those that do return, half carry wounded or dead crew members. The aircraft come back with holes punched through wings, shattered canopies, and hydraulic fluid painting the fuselage in dark streaks. Ground crews work through tropical nights patching metal and scrubbing blood from turret seats. The problem is not courage. American crews have that in surplus. The problem is energy management. A Zero weighs 4,000 pounds empty. A loaded B-25 weighs 19,000. When a Zero dives, it builds speed quickly. When it climbs, it loses speed slowly. When it turns, it bleeds energy in controlled increments. A bomber has no such luxury. Every maneuver costs speed that cannot be regained. Every evasive turn increases fuel consumption. Every climb reduces airspeed to dangerous levels. Doctrine attempts to compensate. Fly in formation. Maintain mutual defensive fire. Use altitude as insurance. Keep speed up at all costs. The manuals are clear. Speed equals survival. A slow bomber is a dead bomber. Every training flight reinforces this. Every combat debrief confirms it. Pilots who slow down do not come home. But the doctrine has a flaw. It assumes the enemy will cooperate. It assumes Zeros will attack in predictable patterns. It assumes American bombers will have the power and altitude to execute defensive maneuvers. In practice, these assumptions collapse. Zeros attack from unexpected angles. Bombers lose engines to mechanical failure or combat damage. Altitude advantage evaporates when fighters bounce from above. The gap between theory and reality is measured in funerals. Training schools in Australia and New Guinea attempt to prepare crews for the impossible. Instructors teach evasive tactics, gunnery discipline, and emergency procedures. They simulate engine failures and attack runs. They drill crews until movements become reflexive. But simulation has limits. No training flight replicates the terror of 8 Zeros circling overhead. No instructor can teach what to do when both engines are failing and the ocean is rising to meet you. Some pilots develop superstitions. They carry lucky coins or photographs. They follow pre-flight rituals. They refuse to fly in certain aircraft. Others grow fatalistic. They stop writing letters home. They volunteer for the most dangerous missions, eager to resolve the unbearable tension of waiting. A very few, start thinking differently. They study the enemy. They analyze after-action reports. They ask questions that make their squadron leaders uncomfortable. Questions like, what if speed is not always the answer? What if the solution is the opposite of what everyone believes? Eric Dawson does not look like a warrior. He is tall and thin, with wire-rimmed glasses that fog in the Pacific humidity. Before the war, he studied mechanical engineering at the University of Washington. He spent his weekends building model aircraft and reading textbooks on aerodynamics. His professors remember him as meticulous but uninspiring. His classmates barely remember him at all. He enlists in December 1941, the day after Pearl Harbor. The recruiter takes one look at his transcript and assigns him to flight training. Dawson does not want to be a pilot. He wants to be an engineer, designing aircraft instead of flying them. But the military has needs, and Dawson's preferences do not appear on any requisition form. Flight school reveals his peculiarity. He is competent but slow. He overthinks every maneuver. While other cadets trust their instincts, Dawson calculates angles and energy states. His instructors note excessive caution in his evaluations. One writes that he flies like a man afraid to break the aircraft. Another questions whether he has the aggression necessary for combat. Dawson graduates near the middle of his class and is assigned to medium bombers. His squadron mates call him the professor. Some call him the calculator. A few call him the librarian because he reads technical manuals the way other men read westerns. He does not drink heavily. He does not chase nurses at the officers' club. He sits in his tent after missions and fills notebooks with diagrams and equations. He sketches attack patterns from memory. He calculates fuel consumption rates at different altitudes. He measures the turning radius of various aircraft types and compares them to enemy performance data. The other pilots tolerate him because he is reliable. He does not showboat. He does not take unnecessary risks. He flies his assigned missions, maintains formation discipline, and brings his crew home. But he is not popular. He asks too many questions during briefings. He points out inconsistencies in tactical doctrine. He suggests modifications to standard procedures that make commanding officers uncomfortable. After one particularly contentious briefing, his squadron leader tells him to stop thinking so much and start flying like everyone else. Dawson does not stop thinking. He cannot. His mind works in systems and variables. When he sees Zeros attacking, he does not see enemy aircraft. He sees velocity vectors and energy equations. When his bomber maneuvers, he feels the G-forces and calculates the speed loss. When engines fail, he measures the glide ratio and plots the descent angle. Everything is data. Everything is physics. His crew trusts him because he keeps them alive, but they do not understand him. The co-pilot thinks he is too cautious. The navigator wishes he would be more decisive. The gunners appreciate his steady flying, but wonder if he has the nerve to fight when fighting is required. None of them know about the notebooks. None of them know about the theory he has been developing for months. The theory that says survival might require doing the exact opposite of what every manual teaches. The tactical problem facing American bomber crews in the Southwest Pacific is simple to state and impossible to solve. Japanese Zeros exploit a fundamental asymmetry. They choose when to engage. They choose the altitude. They choose the angle of attack. Bombers can only react. A Zero at 20,000 feet has potential. Energy. When it dives, that energy converts to kinetic energy. Speed builds rapidly. By the time it reaches the bomber's altitude, it is traveling at over 400 miles per hour. The closure rate is devastating. Bomber gunners have perhaps 5 seconds to acquire, track, and fire. Most never get a clean shot. Standard defensive doctrine calls for the bomber to increase speed and turn into the attack. The theory is sound. By turning, the bomber reduces the Zero's firing window. By maintaining speed, it retains maneuverability, but theory assumes the bomber has speed to give. In practice, damaged or overloaded aircraft cannot accelerate. When a Zero dives, the bomber is already at maximum cruise power. There is no reserve. The turn bleeds speed. The aircraft becomes sluggish. The Zero adjusts and fires anyway. Dawson studies this problem obsessively. He collects after-action reports from surviving crews. He interviews pilots who have escaped Zero attacks. He analyzes gun camera footage when available. The pattern is clear. Bombers that try to outrun Zeros die. Bombers that try to outturn Zeros die slightly slower. The only survivors are those who get lucky, those who encounter incompetent enemy pilots, or those who have friendly fighter cover. But Dawson notices something else in the data, a small anomaly. In 3 separate incidents, bombers with catastrophic engine failures survived Zero attacks, not in spite of their damage, but seemingly because of it. In each case, the crippled bomber entered an uncontrolled descent. The Zeros followed, attempting to finish the kill. But in the chaos of the dive, the Zeros overshot or lost tracking. The bombers crashed or ditched, but the crews survived long enough to be rescued. The incidents are dismissed as statistical noise, lucky accidents. But Dawson sees a pattern. He sees physics. A bomber in a powered glide descends at a specific rate and airspeed. A Zero, diving to attack, builds speed rapidly. If the bomber suddenly decelerates by cutting power, the Zero's closure rate becomes excessive. The Zero pilot must either pull up early, losing the firing solution, or commit to the attack and risk overshooting. Dawson begins to develop a theoretical maneuver. Shut down engines deliberately. Establish a controlled glide. Force attacking Zeros to match the lower airspeed. The enemy fighters, designed for speed and climb, would struggle to slow down quickly enough. Their energy state would become a liability. They would overshoot, stall, or expose themselves to defensive fire. The theory is elegant. It is also insane. Every instinct, every hour of training, every line in every manual says the same thing. Dead engines mean death. Shutting down power in combat is suicide. No pilot would voluntarily give up speed. No crew would accept it. No commander would authorize it. Dawson knows this. He also knows the current tactics are failing. The loss rates prove it. But knowing a better solution exists and convincing anyone to try it are different problems entirely. Dawson presents his idea to his squadron leader in late July 1943. The meeting takes place in a sweltering tent that smells of canvas and cigarette smoke. Major Kendrick listens without interrupting. His face reveals nothing. When Dawson finishes his explanation, complete with diagrams and calculations, Kendrick sets down his coffee and speaks in a tone that ends the discussion. The idea is rejected, not because it lacks merit, but because it requires trust that no commander can afford. Kendrick explains patiently. Crews are already terrified. Morale is fragile. If word spreads that leadership is considering tactics that involve shutting down engines in combat, men will refuse to fly. They will claim illness. They will sabotage their own aircraft. The psychological damage would be catastrophic. Kendrick also points out the practical impossibility. The maneuver requires perfect timing. Too early, and the Zeros adjust. Too late, and the bomber takes fire before entering the glide. The margin for error is non-existent. If Dawson is wrong, if the physics do not work as predicted, an entire crew dies to prove a theory. No commander will authorize that test. Dawson tries to argue. He references the 3 survival incidents. He walks through the energy calculations again. He suggests a controlled test with a single aircraft and a volunteer crew. Kendrick cuts him off. The answer is no. The discussion is over. Dawson is dismissed with a warning. Stop talking about this. Stop putting ideas in other pilots' heads. Fly the missions as briefed. Follow doctrine. Keep his theories to himself. Dawson leaves the tent knowing he will not convince anyone with words. The military does not reward speculation. It rewards results. Until he can demonstrate the maneuver works, it will remain a rejected theory filed away in his notebooks alongside dozens of other ideas that never left the ground. But he does not stop thinking about it. He cannot. Every mission reinforces the problem. Every loss proves the current tactics are insufficient. He watches bombers go down in flames because they tried to outrun Zeros they could never outrun. He watches crews bail out over open ocean because their aircraft lost power, and they had no alternative but to abandon ship. He attends memorial services for men who followed doctrine perfectly and died anyway. His own crew begins to notice his distraction. The co-pilot asks if something is wrong. The navigator mentions that Dawson seems quieter than usual. The gunners wonder if he is losing his nerve. Dawson reassures them. He is fine, just tired, just thinking about home. The lies come easily because the truth is unacceptable. He cannot tell them he has a plan that might save their lives, but requires doing the one thing every pilot is trained never to do. So he waits. He flies his missions. He maintains formation. He follows every order precisely. And he watches the sky, studying how Zeros attack, measuring their dive angles, calculating their closure rates. He is preparing for a moment he knows will come. A moment when the choice is between dying conventionally or testing a theory that everyone believes is suicide. When that moment arrives, Dawson will be ready. Whether his crew will forgive him is another question entirely. August 7, 1943. The briefing room at WWII airfield fills with the smell of sweat and exhaust fumes. 32 pilots and crew members gather around a map table. The target is Rabaul, the heavily fortified Japanese stronghold on New Britain. The mission profile is simple: bomb the harbor installations, destroy supply ships, suppress anti-aircraft positions, return home. Expected losses are listed as moderate, which means at least 3 aircraft will not come back. Dawson's crew draws a position in the second wave. They will follow the lead elements by 3 minutes, hit secondary targets, and withdraw along the northern route. Fighter escort is promised, but unreliable. P-38s will accompany them to the coast, then turn back due to fuel constraints. The bombers will be alone over the target. Standard procedure, standard risk. The flight north is uneventful. The formation holds tight. Weather cooperates. Below, the ocean glitters in morning sunlight. At 10,000 feet, the air is cool enough to make breathing easier. Dawson flies on instruments, trimming the aircraft for maximum fuel efficiency, monitoring engine temperatures. His co-pilot handles radio communication. The navigator updates their position every 10 minutes. Everything is routine until they reach the initial point. The lead elements begin their bomb runs. Anti-aircraft fire erupts from the ground, black puffs of smoke that blossom and fade. Dawson watches the explosions track the lead bombers. Some bursts are close. The formation spreads slightly to avoid concentrating targets. Then, the radio crackles with the call every crew dreads: bandits inbound, high and fast. Zeros appear from the northwest, climbing out of clouds. Dawson counts them. 8 aircraft in 2 groups. They position themselves above the bomber stream, establishing altitude advantage. The P-38s engage, but they are outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Within 2 minutes, the escorts are fighting for their own survival. The bombers continue their approach, alone and exposed. Dawson's aircraft releases its bombs over the harbor. The bombardier confirms hits on a supply depot. Explosions blossom below. Then the port engine coughs. Oil pressure drops. Temperature spikes. The engine is failing, not from combat damage, but from mechanical failure. A connecting rod has fractured. Metal shavings contaminate the oil system. The engine seizes, the propeller freezes, and drag increases instantly. Dawson feathers the propeller and adjusts trim. The bomber can fly on one engine, but barely. Airspeed decreases. Altitude becomes impossible to maintain. The formation pulls ahead, leaving Dawson's aircraft behind. Alone. Vulnerable. The Zeros notice immediately. 4 of them peel away from the main engagement and turn toward the crippled bomber. They circle, assessing, coordinating their attack. The crew knows what this means. The co-pilot suggests dumping the remaining bombs to reduce weight. The navigator plots a course toward the nearest Allied airfield. The gunners test their weapons and call out the Zero positions. Everyone is professional. Everyone is calm. Everyone is certain they are about to die. Dawson watches the Zeros circle. He measures their spacing. He calculates their approach vectors. The starboard engine is still running, but it is overheating. The cylinder head temperature is climbing into the red. They have maybe 5 minutes of power remaining before it fails too. 5 minutes to decide between dying slowly or testing the theory that everyone said was impossible. The starboard engine temperature gauge reads 260 degrees Celsius and climbing. Normal operating maximum is 230. Dawson knows what happens next. The engine will overheat, seize, and fail. When that happens, the bomber becomes a glider with the aerodynamic efficiency of a brick. Standard procedure is to maintain power as long as possible, gain every foot of altitude, and pray for a miracle. Dawson reaches forward and pulls the mixture control to idle cutoff. The starboard engine dies immediately. The propeller windmills for 3 revolutions, then stops as he feathers it. The sudden silence is shocking. The roar of engines has been constant for 3 hours. Now there is only wind noise and the faint hum of hydraulic pumps running on battery power. The co-pilot lunges for the controls. Dawson blocks him with his left arm. His voice is calm, almost clinical. He tells the crew to trust him. He tells them to hold fire until he gives the order. He tells them this is going to work. The co-pilot demands an explanation. Dawson says there is no time. The Zeros are diving. The bomber's nose drops. Airspeed begins to decay. 190 knots, 180, 170. The aircraft is descending at 800 feet per minute, a controlled glide with no power. Dawson adjusts the trim, sets the angle of attack, and watches the Zeros commit to their attack runs. The lead Zero dives from above, building speed, closing the distance. The pilot has a clean shot. No evasive maneuvers from the bomber, no defensive fire, just a crippled aircraft gliding slowly toward the ocean. The range closes to 800 yards, 700, 600. The Zero's airspeed is building past 400 knots. The pilot prepares to fire. Then, the physics takes over. The Zero is diving at high speed. The bomber is gliding at low speed. The closure rate is extreme. The Zero pilot realizes too late that he cannot slow down. Enough to match the bomber's descent rate. He has two choices: pull up early and abort the attack, or commit and risk overshooting. He commits. The Zero's guns flash. Tracers arc toward the bomber, but the range is wrong. The angle is wrong. The rounds pass beneath the fuselage. The Zero screams past, overshooting by 200 yards, the pilot hauling back on the stick to avoid a collision. The fighter climbs steeply, burning energy, trying to reposition. Dawson's tail gunner tracks the Zero as it climbs. He waits until the enemy fighter reaches the apex of its climb, the moment when airspeed is lowest and the aircraft is most vulnerable. Then he fires. A 3-second burst, 50 caliber rounds walk across the Zero's fuselage. The engine explodes. Fire blooms. The Zero rolls inverted and begins to fall. The second Zero attacks from the beam, trying a different angle. Same result. The dive speed is too high. The bomber's glide is too slow. The Zero overshoots, the pilot fighting to maintain control as he tries to bleed off excess speed. He pulls into a steep climb, too steep. The airspeed drops below stall speed. The wings lose lift. The Zero shudders, flips, and enters a spin. The remaining 6 Zeros break formation. Confusion ripples through their attack pattern. Bombers do not behave like this. They run, they maneuver, they fight with speed and altitude. This one is falling from the sky with dead engines, yet it remains controlled, deliberate, lethal. The third Zero attempts a stern attack, approaching from directly behind. The pilot throttles back, trying to match the bomber's descent rate. But a Zero at low speed is unstable. The fighter was designed for speed and climb, not slow-speed precision. The aircraft wallows. The controls feel mushy. The pilot struggles to maintain his sight picture. Dawson's waist gunner fires a sustained burst. Rounds tear through the Zero's cowling. Coolant sprays. The engine loses power. The fighter peels away, trailing white to smoke. 2 Zeros try a coordinated attack from opposite sides. They dive simultaneously, hoping to split the defensive fire. Dawson watches their approach and makes a small adjustment. He drops 10 degrees of flaps. The added drag steepens the glide angle. The bomber's descent rate increases to 1,000 feet per minute. The Zeros, already committed to their dive angles, cannot adjust fast enough. Both overshoot. Both pull up steeply. One manages to climb away, the other stalls. The nose drops. The pilot fights for control, but the altitude is insufficient. The Zero impacts the ocean at 300 knots. The fifth Zero makes a single pass from high above and does not return. The pilot has seen enough. Whatever is happening below defies his training and experience. He climbs back toward altitude and disengages entirely. The sixth and seventh Zero circle at a distance, reassessing. They communicate via radio, their transmissions frantic and confused. American intelligence will later intercept and translate these calls. The pilots report a new defensive tactic. They describe a bomber that weaponizes its own vulnerability. They request guidance. None comes. After 2 minutes of circling, both Zeros make cautious approaches. They do not dive aggressively. They descend gradually, maintaining excess speed, ready to abort at the first sign of danger. Dawson's gunners track them, but hold fire. The range is too great. Ammunition is limited. Patience is required. 1 Zero commits. He approaches from the quarter, firing from extreme range. The rounds fall short. He breaks off immediately. The second Zero tries a different angle. Same result. They are afraid now. The easy kill has become a trap. The crippled bomber has destroyed 4 fighters and damaged 2 others. The risk is no longer acceptable. Both Zeros climb to altitude and turn northwest back toward Rabaul. They abandon the attack entirely. Dawson watches them disappear into the distance. His bomber continues its glide, 4,000 feet altitude remaining, 3,000. The ocean below is getting closer, but the coast of New Guinea is visible ahead. The math is tight but favorable. The crew is silent. They have watched 8 Zeros attack and fail. They have watched enemy fighters stall, spin, and crash because they could not match a powerless glide. They have survived something that should have been impossible, and they have done it by doing the exact thing every manual says will kill them. Dawson lands the bomber on one attempt at an emergency strip near Buna. The aircraft rolls to a stop on the coral runway. No hydraulics, no brakes, just aerodynamic drag and luck. The crew climbs out in silence. Ground crews arrive expecting to find battle damage. They find both engines shut down deliberately. The chief mechanic asks what happened. Dawson tells him to check the port engine for the seized connecting rod. The starboard engine is fine. He shut it down on purpose. The key. Debriefing takes 3 hours. Intelligence officers listen to Dawson's account with skepticism that gradually shifts to fascination. The gunners corroborate every detail. 4 Zeros confirmed destroyed, 2 damaged, 2 driven off. 0 hits on the bomber. The numbers are unprecedented. The officers request a written report. Dawson provides one, complete with diagrams and energy calculations. Within 48 hours, the report reaches 5th Air Force headquarters. Commanders review it with disbelief. A fighter tactics analyst is sent to interview the crew separately. The stories align perfectly. The analyst requests access to Dawson's notebooks. The equations are sound. The physics checks out. A controlled glide at low airspeed creates an energy trap that high-speed attackers cannot safely enter. The analyst writes a provisional tactical bulletin. It does not mandate the maneuver. It cannot. The risks are too severe, but it describes the incident as a case study in unconventional defensive tactics. Copies are distributed to squadron commanders with a note. In extremis, when conventional options are exhausted, consider energy state manipulation as a last resort. Some commanders file the bulletin without reading it. Others dismiss it as a statistical anomaly, but a few take it seriously. They brief their crews. They discuss the physics. They do not order anyone to try it, but they do not forbid it either. The information circulates quietly through the informal networks that connect bomber squadrons across the theater. 3 weeks later, a B-24 over WWII loses 2 engines to flak damage. The pilot, who attended one of the informal briefings, makes a decision. He shuts down the remaining engines and establishes a glide. 5 Zeros attack, 3 overshoot, 1 stalls. The bomber ditches off the coast. The crew is rescued. The pilot survives to tell the story. Another incident follows, then another. The success rate is not perfect. The maneuver requires precise timing and crew discipline. Some pilots misjudge the glide angle. Some crews panic when the engines shut down, but enough attempts succeed to prove the concept is replicable. The physics works. The tactical application is valid. By October 1943, 5th Air Force loss rates begin a measurable decline. Statistical analysis attributes the change to multiple factors: improved fighter escort, better aircraft maintenance, enhanced crew training. But buried in the data is a small anomaly. Bombers with catastrophic engine failures are surviving at higher rates than predicted. The survival rate for crippled aircraft increases from 12% to 27% over a 3-month period. Intelligence officers note the change but cannot explain it. The answer is not in official doctrine or training manuals. It exists in the quiet conversations between crews, in the handwritten notes passed between squadrons, in the unspoken understanding that sometimes the rules are wrong and survival requires thinking differently. The war ends. Dawson returns to the United States in January 1946. He is 31 years old, he has flown 63 combat missions and received the Distinguished Flying Cross. The citation mentions his actions over the Solomons but does not explain the tactical innovation. The details remain classified, buried in after-action reports that few will ever read. Dawson returns to the University of Washington and completes his engineering degree. He works for Boeing for 32 years, designing control systems for commercial aircraft. He marries. He raises 2 daughters. He does not talk about the war unless directly asked, and even then his answers are brief. He is not haunted by what he experienced. He simply considers it a problem that required solving, no different from any engineering challenge. In 1957, the Air Force publishes a revised fighter tactics manual. Buried in Chapter 11, Section 4, is a discussion of energy state exploitation in defensive scenarios. The text describes a maneuver where aircraft deliberately reduce power to force attackers into unfavorable energy conditions. No attribution is given, no names are mentioned. The physics are explained clinically, as if the concept emerged from laboratory testing rather than desperate combat over hostile waters. Flight schools begin teaching the principle in the 1960s. Instructors demonstrate energy management using simulators. Pilots learn to recognize situations where conventional speed-based defenses fail and alternative approaches become necessary. The language evolves. The specific details of Dawson's glide fade into abstraction, but the core insight remains. Sometimes the solution to an impossible problem is making yourself look defeated. Dawson dies in 1994 at the age of 79. His obituary appears in the Seattle Times. It mentions his career at Boeing and his wartime service. It does not mention the August day when he shut down both engines and proved that physics could defeat aggression. His daughters donate his notebooks to the Museum of Flight. The collection includes 43 volumes of calculations, diagrams, and observations. Researchers occasionally reference them when studying unconventional tactics. In 2008, a doctoral student writing a dissertation on Pacific air combat discovers Dawson's after-action report in declassified archives. She traces the tactical evolution of the dead stick glide maneuver through subsequent incidents and training manuals. She interviews surviving crew members who remember the day their pilot did something insane that saved their lives. She publishes her findings in a military history journal that 1,200 people read. The maneuver is never named after Dawson. It becomes known in tactical circles as the energy trap or the stall bait. Modern fighter pilots learn variations adapted for jet aircraft and missile engagements. The principle transcends technology. Make the enemy's strength into a weakness. Turn speed into liability. Use physics as a weapon when firepower is insufficient. Dawson would have appreciated the anonymity. He never sought recognition. He sought solutions. The fact that his solutions survived him, that it continues to save lives in contexts he never imagined, would have satisfied him completely. He understood what many never learn. Legacy is not about names carved in stone. It is about ideas that outlive their creators, about moments when clarity overcomes fear, about the stubborn insistence that there must be another way, even when everyone says there is not.